welcome back TCS TV viewers. It's Jordan Drake and I'm here with Tyler Stalman.
Hey Jordan.
Hey Tyler. And we're going to take a look at Canon's replacement to their 50mm F1.8,
Yes.
which is ancient. It's like 25 years old, but it's always been kind of this legendary lens.
It's an extremely popular lens.
Yeah.
Everybody gets recommended to, if you want to take one step further with your first kit,
Yeah.
this is often
If you really want to learn how to play with aperture, this is the lens. It coined the phrase fantastic plastic, very long in the tooth at this point. So we have the new Canon 50mm STM lens, F1.8, and we're going to go test it out. You're going to do some portraits with it today. Let's take a look.
So to test this lens, I'm here with my wife Ania, and we shoot a lot for her fashion blog, aniab.net, and a 50 is something we use a lot for street style photos, and it's just a really well-rounded street lens, so that's what we're going to use it for today as our test. So this old 50, 1.8, was something that everybody bought. Everybody recommended it. I can't tell you how many people I've told to buy this lens, but there's a few things we were suffering through by using it, which the worst of all was the focus. There's this ancient, grungy focus system that if you turn it to manual and start to move it, sounds like it's not working. So they took this much noisier focus system and replaced it with an STM system, which is a lot more quiet and works well for video focusing as well. It can do a much smoother transition, which hopefully we'll test out later. For me, it means that there isn't the big distraction of hearing gears grinding every time I go to take a photo. Often when I read reviews about the previous 1.8, people would stack it up next to much more expensive lenses like the Canon 1.2 or the Sigma 1.4 and say, look, you can't even tell the difference. That's really only at web resolution. When you zoom in, you can definitely, you've always been able to see the difference between the much cheaper lenses. Usually it shows up in chromatic aberration or general softness, especially in the edges. And from what I've seen so far, it looks like this lens really cleans up the edge softness a lot. So I'm looking forward to seeing these images to see if the aberration has gotten any better. A lot of these 50mm all compare pretty similarly when you close them down. So it's say 5.6 or 8.0, they're going to look relatively similar, even for really cheap lens like this. But I want to see what it looks like at 1.8 compared to the, say, Sigma 50mm when it's at 1.8, or the Canon 50 1.4 when it is at 1.8. That's a fairer comparison. They've made a few changes to the build quality. They put a metal adapter ring in, which is a huge improvement. The other one was breaking constantly. I broke one. I've heard 1,000 stories of people breaking that little plastic ring. So that's going to help a lot, but most of the lens is still plastic and it feels pretty light. We'll see how it holds up. Before this lens came out, I was really hoping it would be similar to the 40mm 2.8 because its construction is really exceptional for the smaller size. This feels a little more plasticky to me. It's still very light, but the metal ring adapter definitely helps. A lot of people buying this lens are going to be putting it on a cropped sensor camera, meaning that you have to multiply 50mm by 1.6 and it comes somewhere around 85. The thing about that is that it is a really quite tight frame, and I think a lot of people are surprised by that. So just keep that in mind when you put it on your camera at home. It might feel a little bit different than on the full frame. On some of the newer cameras like the 7D Mark II, there's autofocus features in video mode that are going to be really great with this STM focusing system, so that it means you're going to get a smoother transition between focus points instead of jumping from one point to the other. And it's a bit quieter, so it won't be picked up on the audio track quite as much. We took the Canon 50mm that we consider to be the contenders right now, and we compared them side by side. Especially at 1.8 is where we really want to see how they look next to each other. Is it worth spending a few hundred extra for the Canon 1.4 or around $1,000 for the Sigma 1.4? Let's find out.
Okay guys, so we're back in Tyler's studio here and we're going to take a look at the images from all the lenses here, and we get a bit of an idea looking at the back of them, but we really want to kind of punch in and really check out the fine details on
Yeah, at smaller resolutions they're going to look pretty similar, and especially like we said at like 5.6 or something, it's not so obvious, but at 1.8 these lenses all start to fall apart a little bit. So what I'm curious about is how badly do they?
Yeah.
If we look at the original 50mm 1.8, we can see where it starts to fall apart on these edges here.
Yeah.
Also, this was one of the few images that was really sharp. A lot of it was hard to find perfectly sharp images of 1.8 on this one. And if we jump over to the new 1.8, we'll notice that it's pretty similar.
It's really similar, yeah. I'm surprised, like especially if we look just around like the edge of the glasses here. You can see that chromatic aberration, and that weird kind of double image flare tends to rear its head there as well.
Yeah, I see it over and over in all of the images that we had at 1.8 on these, and the takeaway for me is that still on these cheaper lenses, 1.8 will compromise your quality.
Totally.
It's not ever going to be all that sharp.
Let's take a look at the 51.4 at 1.8, because this is the one I was really interested in, because that's been a lens I've always suggested stopping down. Here we're stopped down to match those other 50s.
Yeah, so at 1.8 to me, it's a marginal improvement.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit better, but it's not that sharp. If we compare it to what it looks like at 2.8, you can see how sharp it could be.
Yeah.
It could be quite a lot sharper. And the thing is, really, if we go to a much more expensive lens and we take a look at the Sigma, which we also tested, the Sigma at 1.4 all the way open is as sharp as all these other lenses at 2.8.
I'd say, yeah, and you're getting less of that chromatic aberration and stuff like that.
The big takeaway for me looking at all this is there isn't much of a middle ground anymore. These cheap lenses are great because they're affordable, but to get better quality, you really have to jump up to spending about $1,000 on this Sigma.
Yeah, you're looking at like $150, and then for your next step up in quality is $1,000. Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty big gap there.
Which to me is worth it, but it's also going to be a lot heavier. You're going to spend a lot more money on it. For most people that are interested in spending just a little bit, this lens is going to be really great. This new 50 is beautiful at 2.8. I would recommend only shooting it at 1.8 if you have to.
Yeah, if you need the light or you have to have that shallowest depth of field. But where does this leave the 51.4? I mean, is that...
in the dust.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really worth spending 3 times as much for that guy at this point.
Not at all.
For very marginally better performance.
And
1.8 exclusively.
Is not much better. So this is still an amazing first lens, a great addition to any starter kit.
It's a great learning lens, definitely. The one big thing I would say is just remember it's going to be kind of a portrait focal length on your crop bodies. So, if you're looking at something that might be a little more versatile, maybe that new Canon 24 STM or the 40mm Pancake.
Yeah, those pancakes I'm a really big fan of. And honestly, 2.8 is pretty fast. You don't always need to shoot at 1.8 to get blur and to get, you can...
A lot of the time, especially at portrait distances, that 1.8 can be a little too shallow a depth of field. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of good options out there. It's an improvement on the 51.8 that was definitely needed. I was just hoping for a bit of a bigger bump.
Yeah. So now I think the next thing is Canon has to figure out the middle of the range and what they're going to do with their high-end lenses. And
yeah, I'm really hoping we see like an update to the 51.4, hopefully with like an image stabilizer and just something with a little better quality than this 1.8 STM without having to jump $1,000 to get the next level up. Would be really great. Well, definitely thanks for doing the test with us, Tyler.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Check out Tyler at Stalman.com, and if you aren't already listening, seriously give Cameras or Whatever a listen. We're actually going to be doing an episode based on this. We'll be chatting about it in a little more detail, so you can look forward to that. But we'll see you guys next week, and thanks for hanging out with me, Tyler.
Thanks, Ryan.